I grew up hating scary movies. When I was 6 years old, I saw the Michael Jackson Thriller video when it came out. My parents told me not to watch it, but I snuck back into the back room and I watched it. And at the end, when his eyes turned yellow, it was the scariest thing that my young heart could ever stomach. Then about 8 years later, at age 14, the same age that my son is now, I watched another scary scene. I was in the back room of the same house as I watched a man named Rodney King getting beaten repeatedly by four cops for about 15 minutes, while more than a dozen other cops stood around watching. It was like watching a thriller scene all over again. It was like another level of innocence was robbed from me as a teenager because I didn't watch scary movies. It was then that my dad had the black son talk. Now listen, before you turn this off, I need to tell you a little backdrop on my dad's reality so you can understand where I'm coming from. My dad grew up on the Eastern Shore in Cambridge, Maryland, back in the segregated 60s when redlining was in full effect. See, redlining was a way to geographically fence off areas so banks would avoid investing in communities based on their demographics, based on what the people look like. These areas that were frequently discriminated against were black inner city neighborhoods. And side effects for coming outside of your redlined area are being called a monkey, being called the N-word, told to go back to Africa, racially profiled while driving, calling the cops on you for no valid reason, and much, much more. But I'm so glad that's just a thing in the past. He ended up moving from one redlined area on the Eastern Shore all the way to Western Maryland to another redlined area at a place called Wheaton Park in Hagerstown, Maryland. Yeah, he moved from one redline area to another redline area because that's just what you did back in the day. Interesting, huh? See, my dad, while he was in Hagerstown, he played basketball at North High. And word was they called him Sterl the Pearl because his jump shot was so pretty. And in the summers, he would go back and forth from Hagerstown to Cambridge and visit his mom. While he was at Cambridge, he was a part of a lot of civil rights peaceful protests that turned violent because he dared step outside of his redlined area. He was spit on, hosed, had dogs unleashed on the people protesting. This was all while he was just a high school student. After graduating from high school, my dad chose to go into the Vietnam War. He told me while he was there, he was in charge of a group of soldiers, and he sent them first to go in the helicopter because he was going to stay back with his men. It wasn't long after that helicopter was up in the air, they was hit by rocket fire and crashed. And my dad told me that he regretted that because he felt like he could have done something to avoid it. His time coming back from the war, he was a hero to some, but don't get it twisted. He had to stay in his place inside that red line area because he could be spit on for sitting at the wrong table. After the Vietnam War, he went to what is now called Hagerstown Community College under the GI Bill. While he was there, he took a public speaking class, and that teacher saw some special type of leadership in my dad. And so she introduced my dad to someone who knew someone who knew someone, and later my dad would be one of the first black men to work in this area at IBM. 1968, my dad was more like a hidden figure. The son, but he was visible to me. What that teacher did for my dad in the 60s would change the course of his family for generations. So now we go back to watching TV in the back room. I witnessed the Rodney King trial, and I saw 4 officers who repeatedly beat Rodney King were acquitted of all charges, and that begins the LA riots. And my dad begins to have another talk with me about how to use my words in the right way to protest. He didn't belittle him. Listen, he's been there before. He's been redlined. He's been contained. He's been confined. He understands the passion. And even though he's talking to me about using my words, it was crazy because back in the day I used to stutter until I took speech therapy. He must have saw something in me. And he said, don't destroy your property because you don't want your message to be muddied by the actions that you display. See, I can remember so many good times with my dad. I remember so many great conversations. I can remember him showing me how to hold my hands to throw a fishing line out. And at age 14 or 15, I can now remember him holding my hands on how to get my registration and driver's license out, put it in my left hand, roll down the window, turn on the dome light, and put your hands on 10 and 2, son. Because I need that officer to know that you want him to go home. And I need you to get home too. And this is where I pause this story. And students, I want to speak to you. Whether you've seen me at your school before or speaking at a youth conference, or this is your first time, I want to play the same role that my father played with me. I have some words I need to share with you. Right now, we're at a wild time in our nation's history. Listen, we've been here before, and sadly, we're probably going to be here again. But the words that my father said to me, I want to pass down to you. In your anger, don't destroy your property. Don't destroy other people's property. Because you don't want to muddy your message by the actions that you display. No matter what you do, I need you to make sure that officer knows that you want him to get home, because I need you to get home too. In the midst of you exercising your First Amendment right to freedom of speech, yes, you have it as well. No matter what you do, I need you to make sure that officer knows that you want him to get home, because I need you to get home too. I want you to burn your cities down. I want you to destroy your area's buildings, the legacy of your town and legacy of your cities. I want you to rebuild them and refocus them and reframe them, because that will just muddy up the message of the current day civil rights movement. So no matter what you do, I need you to make sure that officer knows that you want him to get home, because I need you to get home too. And when you exercise your First Amendment right to freedom of speech, you're going to encounter people who have not advanced from my father's era ways of thinking. They're going to tell you, stay in your place. Just remember, no matter what you do, I need you to make sure that the officer knows you want him to get home, because I need you to get home too. I want to help you reframe the posts and the comments that you see as just a death rattle. See, a death rattle is something that happens when the body begins to die. It begins this breathing pattern. It begins to change. It creates this rattling sound. This sound is known as a death rattle. It's a part of the dying process. But you see these posts and comments as a dying process. Because I believe that in America, we saw that George Floyd was just a symbol of what's to come. Because young people, I can hear a death rattle in these posts and comments. It's dying out. I can hear a death rattle of a generation that was raised in segregation that's trying to keep their old school traditions relevant. They'll try and they'll try, but it's just a death rattle. It's not on you if they choose to avoid people who look differently from them. Listen, they refuse that. Don't play chicken, because it's okay to stomp all over them eggshells and make them uncomfortable. When they get upset, just a death rattle. And when you hear outdated point of views about people who look like your best friends, just keep mental notes and just know they're failing the history test. It ain't nothing but a death rattle. And when you see through your family's prejudiced point of views and you refuse to be on the wrong side of history, and it's okay to break a family curse, and when they begin to curse, all you hear is a death rattle. And when that mindset disrespectfully calls others those people, and they don't know that you follow those people, and they're completely blind to the good works that you see those people do, when they keep complaining, all I want you to hear is a death rattle. And when their racist thoughts think their race is more superior than your close friend's skin, and you clearly see the lie when now they try to now step out and say, oh no, wait, I'm colorblind. When you hear them lies, it's here a death rattle. And when they're stuck on 24-hour news cycles, and while you and your friend are starting a movement from a hashtag, and when they complain, all you hear is a death rattle. And the people who thought it was safe to continue racist jokes, and when you step up on the scene, you correct them and say nope, and when they kick and scream, all you hear is a death rattle. Listen, this generation is not sorry that they can't make the topic of racism easier for you to digest. You just might have to be still and take this medicine. And when you kick and scream about how it tastes going down, it's okay. They'll just hear a death rattle. Young people, don't be afraid to war in heavenly places, and also beat them up in a voting booth, because that sound will soon fade away. The sound of that death rattle. Young people, you have the ability to do incredible things. This world is your platform. You need to rock it with your words, because you have the power to save a life. I need you to find your voice, find your creativity, and rock your mic.